Hello, I am Jeff, Not Dead Yet Adventures is the name of my channel. I'm a nomad. I've been on the road for 3 years. And this is the second video of a 3-part series I'm doing on videos I would have liked to have heard or could have helped me long ago. I don't know what's up with this dry cough. Every time I start talking, I want to cough. So I'm sorry if that's an issue for you. I'll edit out what I can, but it's part of life, right? So the budget, right? The first video I was talking about doing a life assessment and really, sit down and honestly figure out where you're at and where you want to be. Now the budget is everybody's got a budget video, right? And that's kind of what spurred this whole thought process with me and put that brain worm in me that I'm trying to, expel. But the budget, for me, like all these people talk about what they're spending, like what it costs. And to me, that's like the least important thing. For me, the budget video that would have been super helpful is learning to trim my budget before I left. And this is going to be strange, but I'm going to take the whole budget video thing and kind of turn it sideways. Is live the budget you want when you're abroad while you're still at home. So that's kind of cryptic and I don't mean it to be, but what I'm saying is, like, right now, the way I live is I don't buy anything that isn't going in my mouth or isn't going in my backpack. And guess what? My backpack's a set size and it's full. So anything I buy, whether it's a souvenir magnet or, a cup of coffee or a bottle of water, if I can't carry it with me, it's just getting thrown away, and I don't want to be throwing money away. One of the biggest things I did when I started really hammering my budget is I talked about this before, but I quantified everything I bought into dollars and cents, and especially everything I threw away. And that really, really started to hit home. When you go, every so often you're looking at leftovers in the fridge and you throw them out, or something's molded, or I didn't eat this, I didn't do this, or, there's just so many things in life that we end up just in America that I just ended up throwing away. And that when I started quantifying that all into dollars and cents, whether it was a half a scoop of coffee I didn't make coffee and drink, or half a pot of coffee I didn't drink. Did I need to make a full pot? Could I make a half pot? Could I do this? And scrutinizing every penny. I started doing that because I wanted to travel more. I went on a trip and then I'm like, hey, actually this is better than what I'm doing. Let me go on another trip. So I started looking farther out. How do I get money to go on that trip? Let me stop the drive-through coffee. Let me stop this. Let me stop going to restaurants. Let me stop doing Taco Bell once a week. Let me stop this. And all of a sudden I started, money started just collecting, right? All this money just starts collecting. Do I need to eat blueberries every day? Well, maybe, right? But do I need to eat chips? No, right? And one of the first things I did was I got rid of my microwave. And it's ironic because I got rid of my microwave for a different reason. I was going through watching these videos and this gal was talking about, go buy 2 plants identical, or go buy 4, right? Or 10, however many you want to run this test, right? And microwave water, let it cool, and water, a couple of the plants, and then just take regular tap water, or use bottled water, whatever, right? Same water, and then water the other 2 plants and see what happens. And, and I did that. I put a couple plants out on the deck, and I watered some with microwaved water, and I watered some with regular water, and guess what? The microwave ones died. I'm not saying it will for you. I'm not saying, something else didn't kill them, but I got rid of my microwave. And in doing so, leftovers became a whole thing. So I used to, cook a big meal or larger portions with the plan to put half of it in the fridge and eat the other half later, right? In fact, I would had these beautiful little porcelain cups with lids, and I would make pasta with chicken or zucchini or whatever, and portion it out, and I'd put them in the fridge, and then every day, for like a week, I'd have my meal. I just microwave it, super easy, right? Got rid of the microwave. Now that's harder, right? You can put them in a pot with some boiling water to heat them, or you can put them in the oven. Too much work. So I started cooking more. No more Hot Pockets, no more bagel dogs, no more corn dogs, no more burritos, right? Burritos now had to be in the oven. So I got a toaster oven that was like an air fryer. Went through this whole process, right? But that was the start of me starting to scrutinize my budget. So if I would say to myself 5-10 years ago, if I want to think about traveling abroad, the budget abroad is not the issue. The budget today is the issue. The budget tomorrow, next week, next month is the issue. And I would go to, don't buy anything that you're not going to eat in the next 72 hours unless you're putting it in the freezer and you're doing a long-term meal plans and stuff like that. But, get in that habit of, I'm going to eat 100% of what I buy food-wise, and I'm only going to buy exactly what I need to eat. I'm not going to have snacks just sitting around, and I'm not going to have this. Yes, I'll buy water by the case and save that money, and I'll buy meat, buy the big cut of meat, cut it up and portion it myself. But I was wasting so much money on little things, and I didn't realize that until I got very, very obsessive about scrutinizing my budget. And do I really need that comfort food? Do I really need a cinnamon roll once a week? Now the taco truck, yes, I need the taco truck at least once a week. Taco Tuesday is a legit thing, and tacos will happen. But I don't need to go out and eat every day, right? I can cook. I can eat at home. I can eat smartly and cheaply. And once I started to do all that, the idea of taking a weekend trip farther than, 20 minutes from my house, 30 minutes from my house became reality. And then I started doing these weekend trips, and then I realized, I was living in California, and the cost to go anywhere in California became comparable to going overseas. I started looking at packages, travel packages, and you start getting in there and doing the homework of traveling, and you start seeing, hey, these travel packages are, they're not much more than a weekend away. So if I can do a weekend out of town every 2 or 3 months, cut that out, and twice a year I can go on these, packages outside the US to other places that I wanted to explore. And so that was how I got started. But the budget is the important thing. And I got so obsessive with my budget, I was searching for every little leak in my budget. And I got so obsessive that I had a whiteboard, and I had all the groceries I was buying. I had a meal plan, and I had, I factored in variability into that. And it taught me to budget in a whole different mindset. And now, and it's carried on, right? I changed my entire life. It wasn't just like it taking a diet. It was a life change, right? It was a, what do you call that? It was a categorical, or significant, shift, right? It was an altering of reality in that I wasn't going to go back to that. So now when I'm out walking around, sure, I'll see nice things. And the one weakness I have is the little fruit tarts. I'm always oh, let me try that. And that's and coffee, of course, right? But so those are things I will just spend, frivolously on. But when I'm out walking around, I don't buy shirts. I don't buy shoes. I don't buy, oh, that would be nice to have, or oh, that would be nice to have. Oh, no, none of that, is in my purchasing, right? Or my spending. And by living that way, I have a lot more money to go and do other things that are fun or go places. And that's all a choice, right? You can choose to go to Starbucks every day or twice a week or 10 times a week, right? Or you can choose to get on a plane for the same price, and that's kind of how I started looking at everything. I started putting everything into a binary, and that really helped motivate me budget-wise. Do I want this Starbucks, or do I, and the one I used personally was, I'd been to the Philippines and I'm out on this boat trip, island hopping, and we're out in the middle of nowhere. Like, there's no houses with power, and this guy comes paddling up on a kayak and he's got coconuts stacked all over this kayak. And, and I'm impressed that he's got them all like wedged in there and they're not falling off, right? And, he's like, sir, coconut? And I'm like, how much, right? And he gives me a price. I'm like, okay. And so he sits there and he's sitting there on this thing and he takes a machete and he's like, whack, whack. And I'm like, one little slip and there goes his arm, right? I mean, that machete isn't dull. It's just slicing right into that coconut. And so he pops the top off. He's got a little bamboo straw he throws in there. He's like, sir, would you like some rum? And I'm like, okay. So he pours half of it out, right? Fills it with rum. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of rum. But would I rather have that rum-filled coconut while I'm swimming around the South Pacific or East Philippine Sea, whatever you want to call it, out there in El Nido or Coron, Palawan? Would I rather have that coconut or a Starbucks and a pastry? Because guess what? That Starbucks and pastry, I can get 2 or 3 coconuts. And believe me, I'd rather have 2 or 3 coconuts than a Starbucks, right? And so would the rum is not the best, but so would my body. My body would much rather have that coconut than that Starbucks. And so that was the binary. Every time I saw a Starbucks, because believe me, I had a drive-through coffee addiction, Dutch Bros and 911 were, oh man, I love those things, right? But those things, my belly also loved those things because it got bigger. And, that much caffeine's not good for the health. And there's all kinds of negative things. Nothing about that was good for me. It wasn't good for my budget, wasn't good for my health, wasn't good for, all that sugar. You don't realize how much it affects the brain. But by making these budgetary decisions, they had a collateral effect on one, by creating that binary between the coffee and the coconut, it had a collateral effect on my health, on my ability to travel, and my thought process, right? By eating healthier, it was cheaper and allowed me to travel. And by getting more frugal about what I owned, and the one big regret I have is I didn't really start selling until about 6 months before I left, when I should have been selling immediately 5 years ago or 5 years before I wanted to leave. I should have been getting rid of things. Like, if you go through a self-assessment and you decide you actually want to think about going out and traveling or doing this or doing that, walk around the house and go, what do I not need? What do I not need? Because Marcos on Overstay Road, King Marcos, Mark Blackard, he said, he always called it expeditionary mode, right? If you can't pick it up and carry it, it's not yours. You don't own it unless you can pick it up and walk away with it. Stay in expeditionary mode, 2 bags and a carry-on, and and there's a lot of truth in that. There were so many things in my house, so many little, nice to haves I started buying that were just money wasted. Just money wasted. And I started reaching into that trash can and pulling out money, and I'm like, why did I buy this? Why did I buy this? Yeah, sure, it's neat, but did I get my money's worth out of it? Could I have spent that money on something else I would have appreciated more? Would that money have taken me someplace I would rather be than where I'm at now? Could I have invested that money into something that would have given me a better return on, anything? So if you go through the life assessment and you're moving forward with the idea that, you want to travel, go expat, go nomad, or even just, significantly change your life, and you want to listen to my advice would be, get brutally honest with yourself about your budget. And everything you buy, do I actually need this? Do I actually need it or do I want it? And, you know, I have the good fortune of having backpacked a bit when I was younger, and I didn't really have anybody to teach me how to backpack, so I had to go into books, right? The internet wasn't there, YouTube wasn't there, so I had to actually go into books and read books about backpacking so I understood it, and get Backpacker magazine and read all these articles and read all these perspectives and opinions in the magazines. And then the difference about books back then as opposed to like these YouTube videos is it took a lot of time and effort to make a book. So it wasn't, there was a filtering process there. You didn't get like junk books made, right? Books were only made if there was a lot of credibility in what was written. And so, the old adage in backpacking was make 3 piles. Stuff you have to live, stuff you absolutely have to live, things you want to take with you, and things that would be nice to have. Get rid of the last 2 piles and take the 1. And to me, having that perspective and playing that out on the trail as a young man and understanding the difference that made in the quality of hike and the quality of adventure I had, understanding that, like I bought a GPS back when they were brand new. It was like super expensive and huge. Took all these batteries, so now I've got a solar charger, I've got batteries, and I mean, I'm talking, early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I've got this, solar charger, and it was so expensive, and, all this money just wasted on things. And I carried them. I carried them down the trail. Why? All it did was, that old GPS did was tell me I could read a map. Right? And a map was light and cheap and easy and a necessity, right? I would never go into the back country without a paper map. People say, oh, well, you can use, yeah, GPSs are great. GPSs are useful, but having a paper map is a totally different thing because it gives you so much more information. Now, maybe these new mapping programs I'm not aware of, I don't care about, maybe they're great, but to me, that paper map is the lightest thing possible, and it's the most effective. So that's my opinion. But having that experience, when I started, down this path about, filtering everything, I wish I started selling off my stuff sooner because I had so many things that were just nice to haves. And not even like I want to have this with me, right? They were in that 3rd pile, right? Or that 1st pile, right? The 1st pile to get gone, and I don't need 5 pairs of shoes, right? I have 1 pair of shoes, 1 pair of sandals, flip-flops, right? Now, if I were living in a house, I would probably have some dress shoes. I'd have this, I'd have that, but I'm not, and I don't need a super fancy shirt. I don't need a super fancy suit, right? I don't need, all this. I don't need, 3 pairs of workout clothes. I need 1 pair of swim shorts. I don't need 5, right? And understanding that and understanding that that's where I wanted to be, I wish I started living the life I wanted in the future while I was still in America. Because if I started living my budget when I was in America sooner, the budget I would employ when I went abroad, then that would open up so many other options and thought processes. And, again, I go back to, I don't spend money on anything that I'm not putting in my mouth or is going in my backpack. So if you're at home in America or in an apartment somewhere and you're thinking about traveling or going nomad, try that in your real life. Do you need the Starbucks or do you want it? Do you want to spend that money on a Starbucks or do you want to spend that money on a flight? I recently there's a video coming soon for me. I took a flight from Albania to Rome for $22. Actually, I think it was euro, but pretty much the same right now, right? So $22, I took a flight from Tirana, Albania to Rome. What did you waste $22 on this month? And would that buy you a flight? Would that buy you, and so there's all these opportunities when $22, how many Starbucks trips is that? That's like 2.5 trips to Dutch Bros. So how many trips, or 3 trips to Dutch Bros? Maybe, right? 4 if you're buying the cheap small. So 4 trips to Dutch Bros, or a day trip to, half a trip to Rome, half a trip to Rome. Which would you do? Which are you going to do? And if you start living the lifestyle you want now, that will better predict your budget in the future, better predict your quality of life, better predict the next phase of this video series I'm doing. And just learning to filter everything, I don't believe in tracking every penny now that I'm on the road, but leading up to the road, by tracking every penny I spent meticulously, that changed my behavior, changed my life, changed my behavior. And now I'm just riding that coattail. And I go through a reset every so often when I find myself like picking up a snack here, or doing this or doing that, right? Because by tracking every penny, I started cutting out all my snacks. I started cutting out all of this. I started cutting out, all this frivolous, just wasteful spending. And every once in a while, now that I've been on the road, I'll go through a period like I was taking too many taxis in Prague and Vienna. And it's like, whoa, I need to go back to the bus, right? Because I'm wasting too much money on, convenience, when, I'm still vertical and I can still step it out. So I need to be stepping it out and grab a bus and, walk the kilometer, not be a lazy bum and jump in a Uber or Bolt or whatever. But that all has roots in being meticulously, scrutinizing, I can't get enough words to emphasize, just super hyper scrutinization of every penny I spent. And specifically getting down to food, activities, do I need to go to Walmart and buy a new shirt? No. Do I need to go buy new socks? Are the ones I have, do they have holes? No. Okay, I don't need new socks, right? Do I need new shoes? Are the ones I have comfortable and working? How many times a year am I going to buy shoes? How many times, a month? Buy quality, it lasts longer. Buy durable, keep it longer. And so that all, this is a long-winded rant about budgets, but all this talk about, budget videos, I think it's like way farther down the thought process and mostly irrelevant. When I start watching a lot of these budget videos, I mentioned 2 I thought were super useful, and there's more out there, but Retired to Rome, I'm going to shout them out again. Retired to Rome, Retired number 2 Rome, and they do really great budget videos. And the reason I say that is they're tracking their yearly budget and their monthly consistently. And then I, talk about Andrea, New Life Albania. Again, she's tracking her budget monthly. And to me, if you're going to find somebody who does budget videos, look for somebody who consistently shows you every month or every quarter or whatever. But these budget videos where they take a snapshot, or they, like this guy, he's out there just hypothesizing what a budget would be because he found a really cheap rent. And there's no reality to that. I found a really good hotel rate one time, but the hard part about that hotel is there was no real walking away from it, right? You pretty much had to grab an Uber or a Bolt or Grab, whatever it was, every time you left. And so every time you left the hotel, you're looking at $20. Now, if I take that, $20 out, $20 back, or, $20 a day, whatever it is, right? Every time I left the hotel, my cost of the daily hotel is going up. And then there's no food nearby. So I had to eat in the hotel or go out for food. And there's no grocery stores in walking distance. There's nothing in walking distance. So the cost of the hotel seemed cheap, but it really wasn't. And a lot of these budget videos, they're not giving you the total picture, right? So that cost of the hotel, it seemed like it was going to be X when it was really about twice the price because of all the other money I had to spend to compensate for the location. So when people give you a snapshot of their budget 1 month out of a year, or, hey, I saw this rent, and if you get this rent, you could live on this. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. If you're going to give any credence to anybody's budget, give credence to people who show you monthly. But more importantly, look at your own budget. And, like I said in my video, I break it up into, travel money, I break it up into rent, I break it up into food and everything else. And if you start scrutinizing your own budget at home and you break out, these are my bills, this is where I'm spending money, this is what it costs me, you will very quickly be able to assess and deduce whether or not you can afford to live abroad in the lifestyle you want. Because it's not about survival, right? It's like, what lifestyle do you want? And that's leads us into the next video I'm going to do. I'm going to talk about, if you go through the life assessment, if you scrutinize your budget and sort out like how much money you have, where you're spending money, then you can look at the plan, right? And that'll be the topic of my next video. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to go get some coffee because I only had like 2 cups at breakfast, and maybe a little snack because it's lunchtime. Trying to look. Yeah, the boats are still out there. But anyway, I'll be back. Hope you will be too. Hope you will come back as well. There we go. Try that. Take care.